Hey, welcome. Today we are diving into a question that is, it's really at the absolute heart of the Christian faith. How can an imperfect person, a human being, ever hope to be made right with a perfect God? It's a massive question, and believe me, the answer is way more fascinating than you might think.
So this is it, right? This is the fundamental problem. How can someone who messes up, who falls short, how can we stand before a God who is literally the definition of perfection? The search for an answer to this has shaped everything, centuries of theology, debate, and even major divisions in history.
To really get our heads around the different answers, it helps to think of them as two totally different maps for the exact same spiritual journey. They both say they lead to the same place, but the paths they lay out, the whole nature of the trip is just fundamentally different.
Okay, so at the core of these two maps are two completely different ways of looking at this thing called righteousness. Is it like a judge in a courtroom banging a gavel and just declaring you not guilty, changing your legal status on paper? Or is it more like a doctor giving you some powerful medicine that actually starts to heal you from the inside out? Is it a legal decree or a real internal transformation? That's the huge difference we're going to unpack.
All right, let's start with the first map. This one really comes into focus during the Protestant Reformation, and it frames the whole answer in, legal terms, almost like a courtroom drama.
The fancy term for this is forensic justification. Now, forensic just means legal, like in a court. So in this view, the second a person has faith, this incredible exchange takes place. Christ's perfect record is legally transferred, or imputed, to their account. It's kind of like a billionaire just dropping a fortune into your bankrupt bank account. God looks at the ledger, sees Christ's perfect balance, and declares you righteous. Theologian R.C. Sproul really nails the idea here. He calls it a righteousness that is extra nos, which is just Latin for outside of us. It's an alien righteousness. It comes from someone else, from Christ, and it's put on you like a perfect cloak that covers all your flaws. The key thing to get here is that you're not instantly perfect on the inside, but you are legally counted as perfect in God's sight.
So, to boil it all down for this first map, number one, justification is a one-and-done deal. It happens in an instant. It's a finished event in the past. And number two, there's a really sharp dividing line between justification, that legal declaration, and sanctification, which is the totally separate, lifelong process of actually becoming a better, holier person.
Okay, now let's switch gears and look at the second map, because it paints a very, very different picture. This is the classical historical view, the one held by the Catholic Church. And it sees righteousness not as something applied from the outside, but as a real, transformative gift that literally changes you from within.
So in this view, when God gives you the gift of righteousness, it actually changes you. It's not just a cloak covering up the old you, it's more like a seed of new life being planted inside of you. This is an inherent righteousness. It becomes a part of who you are, and it jumpstarts a life of real internal transformation.
And what's so interesting is this quote from Alistair McGrath, who's a Protestant historian. He points out that for the first 1,500 years of Christianity, this was the understanding. Justification wasn't just a change in your legal file, it was about a real change in who you are as a person. The goal wasn't just to treat someone as righteous, but to actually begin the process of making them righteous.
So you see, on this map, there isn't this big wall between being declared righteous and becoming righteous. They're really just two sides of the same coin. Justification is the starting gun for a lifelong race of sanctification, a journey of being transformed bit by bit into the image of Christ.
Okay, so if righteousness is a journey of transformation, what does that journey actually look like? Well, to understand this view, there is no better map in the entire Bible than the story of the Exodus, when God freed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt.
The Exodus isn't just some ancient story collecting dust. It's seen as a type, a real historical event that God designed from the beginning to be a blueprint for our own spiritual journey from slavery to freedom. What happened to the Israelites physically is a picture of what happens to us spiritually. And the parallels, they are just incredible. The Israelites' bondage in Egypt, that's a perfect picture of our slavery to sin. The miraculous crossing of the Red Sea, that's a type of baptism, freeing us from that sin's power. The 40 years they wandered in the wilderness. What a perfect image of the Christian life, right? A time of testing, of learning to trust God. And finally, their arrival in the Promised Land, well, that points to our ultimate goal, eternal life with God.
But here's the crucial point. The Exodus was a real journey with real dangers.
Not everyone who left Egypt actually made it to the Promised Land. The New Testament itself says that many of them fell in the wilderness because they gave up. This analogy shows that salvation isn't just about crossing a starting line. It's a race you have to keep running, and it requires our cooperation the whole way.
But that brings up a pretty big question, doesn't it? If the Christian life is this long, hard journey through a spiritual wilderness, how on earth are you supposed to survive it? How do you find the strength to just keep going day after day?
The answer is that God doesn't just push us out into the desert and say, good luck. Just like He provided for the Israelites, He provides for us. In the Catholic view, the sacraments are the spiritual food and water for our journey, the very provisions we need to persevere.
And again, the parallels here are just amazing. Take a look. When the Israelites were starving, God sent manna from heaven. Jesus Himself connects this directly to the Eucharist, supernatural food for our journey. When the Israelites sinned, they had the tabernacle and sacrifices for forgiveness. For us, there's the sacrament of reconciliation, a place to go and be restored when we stumble.
So these sacraments aren't just symbolic rituals. They're seen as real encounters with God's grace, and they're designed to give us exactly what we need to keep walking. They provide that ongoing nourishment and mercy to finish the journey from the slavery of sin all the way to the freedom of the Promised Land.
So, that brings us right back to where we started, with our two maps. Two profoundly different ways of seeing our relationship with God, and you can really sum it up this way. For one, salvation is a destination you've already reached. For the other, it's the journey itself.
So, how do you see it? Is salvation a one-time legal transaction that happened in your past? A moment where your status changed, your ticket was punched, and you've basically arrived? Or is salvation the journey itself, an ongoing, dynamic process of being changed, healed, and transformed, day by day, as you walk with God through the wilderness of this life?
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. If the Exodus is the true map for your spiritual life, if salvation isn't just something that happened back then, but it's the very road you are walking on right now, with all its ups and downs, how does that change the way you take your very next step?